It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Hey, everybody. I am so excited to introduce It's About to Go Down. I'm Cathey Armias.
And I am Mark Williams, and we would like to welcome in a show to all of you the CEO of Billy. What's Billy? A digital insurance agency, but more importantly, the man behind it all, the man who's going to bring us an idea today, Nyasha Harmony-Gutsa, and he is going to talk to us today about being the last line of defense in your life by preparing for when bad things happen. Nyasha, welcome to It's About to Go Down.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Pleasure to be on the show as well.
Man, it's great. I remember, and I'm only going to make this quick Toastmasters reference. I remember meeting you many moons ago, and it is so awesome to be back here with you and to see all the amazing things that you're doing. With that said, can you tell everybody about this whole idea that we should be the last line of defense in our lives, that we should be preparing for when bad things happen? Tell us a little bit more about that idea and what even sparked and inspired this idea for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's an idea per se. I think that maybe it's a refinement of things that we do today, and maybe also part of being aware of what you need to do to protect yourself. And, you know, this idea is really centered around understanding insurance, because it is your last line of defense when those bad things do happen. And not having it means that you don't have a line of defense when those bad things happen. And the story around this really starts off with observations of my parents. I had a friend who died during COVID, and it was really hard to repatriate his body back home. And I've seen people who died during COVID, their families also going bankrupt because they didn't think that they needed such things as life insurance or, you know, funeral policies to help bury you as well. Hence, this idea of how do people manage their insurance better so it is their last line of defense, whether you're a person or you're a business as well.
You know, it's really interesting, Asha. Like, I remember when we talked, you know, we had our kind of conversation before we got on the show, and I was like, when we were first talking about it, I was like, oh, I'm probably one of those people. I want to avoid insurance at all costs, right? Because a lot of people, I think, feel like it's an expense that you pay forever. But you really started, you know, the story of your friend actually really hit my heart, you know, hearing about how because it was mostly friends that kind of pulled together, right, to help with the funeral costs and transporting his body back home and everything. And it really made me think about, two things. It made me think about really the technical piece of, like, you need to have a last line of defense because you don't know what's going to happen. But also kind of there was a community tie in there that was kind of cool too. So I just, you know, I'm curious to if this were a real idea, right? Because you said at the beginning, it's kind of it's more of a, I don't know, maybe a statement than an idea. I don't know. What do you think? It's like more of like it just is what it is. But if this were more of an idea, what would you tell people to get people to actually get through to people to make them see that it really is, it's just really critical. Like, how would you hit their heart is, I guess, what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to start off on a lighter note, I would ask those people to look at their parents and grandparents, and even just their last line of defense, which is insurance. How do they manage this insurance? If you look at your grandparents and your parents, it's probably in a box. For my parents, it's in a box under my mom's dresser, right? Like her princess table. When she's putting makeup on, what she sits on under it are her life documents. Now, if something happened to them, how am I supposed to know that their last line of defense is in that box, for example, right? And how am I supposed to know what I'm covered against if it's in a piece of paper that is not even current with the policies that they're paying for today? Right? The insurance policy they got 20 years ago is most likely not the insurance policy that they're using today, because it expired and some things probably changed. So what if there was just one way for you to manage all your insurance, in a very easy to use app, like everything for insurance? That's the big, bright idea. And this thing can also educate you on, what you're covered for, what you're not covered for, in a way that's not as overwhelming. So you don't end up in a situation like my friend Miguel, who died in a motorcycle accident. So he might have had motorcycle insurance and renter's insurance, but because maybe of youth you think you're not going to die, but when you do die, the burden is left to your family and friends to be your last line of defense. And for a lot of folks, people don't realize how expensive a casket is. It's like $5,000 to get one, and that's just the casket. Then there's the funeral itself, and that can go as much as $25,000, or even a plot of land to bury a person can be $10,000 to do. So having insurance helps you and your loved ones, in that time of need, because if you don't have it, you are relying on your friends to do a GoFundMe, or in this case, you're going to have debts imposed on your family because you weren't prepared for that to happen. But it's not just situations like that, it's also with things like your home. And luckily, when you get a loan, for example, from a bank, they do force you to get insurance, but just think of everything that's around you. You've got a car, you have a house, you have children, you have a partner. A lot of things that you have today need insurance, and the insurance that you have lives in many different places, like folders. And what if there was just one place to get educated on, this is what you have, this is what you don't have, press a button here and you can be covered for all these things.
Nyasha, I would love to ask you to think about one word. And the one word that I'm going to share with you is a word that Cathey brought up not too long ago. And it's a word that you've said a number of times already. And I'm sorry to be so mysterious, but that's just the way I set things up, right? Cathey said she probably was the type of person who wouldn't even deal with insurance, right? And Cathey's not alone. I was that way for a long time as well. And I think a lot of people are. And I think the word insurance is this trigger word that gets people like antsy and, oh, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to talk about this.
Insurance, yeah.
Insurance, right? How do you get people to buy into this idea? And again, I know you didn't call it an idea, it's more of a restatement, right? But how do you get people to buy into the need to get insurance without talking about the word first?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I don't think I have quite like a definite answer. What I've seen that works is mostly education around what you need to cover yourself against. And the bad thing that happens in this world of insurance is insurance itself is associated with a bad event, or it's associated with a major life purchase. You're buying a car, you're buying a home, you're starting a business, you need insurance. But insurance is just like associated with, if something bad happens, then you need to get this. I've often wondered if you flip the narrative of if something bad to, something good happens, you can use your insurance for XYZ, right? As a way to maybe flip that. But I don't have concrete examples yet of how that would work, but just it's an idea. Maybe there's a way to flip the narrative of, good things happen and you need to get insurance.
Yeah, that would be really interesting, wouldn't it, Mark? I know. I was waiting, Nyasha. I was like, oh, what example is he going to say? Like, I was like, what? I mean, because I was trying to think of one that would be a positive one, but that would be. Well, let me ask you this too, because Mark and I, what we do on the show mostly, right? We're coaching people on how they talk about their ideas or their work or whatever. So how, let's say you're giving a TED talk on this tomorrow, like how would you introduce this, and how would you pull the commercialism out of it too? I feel like it can feel very commercialized, and you don't even need to do that at this point. You just need people to feel like, oh my gosh, I never really thought about how comforting maybe insurance could be, right? And then but like tying the word comfort to that might be cool too. Like, I don't know, putting some kind of feeling that makes you feel. Anyway, what do you think about that, Nyasha?
Yeah, I mean, if I were my own commercial director, probably would be a Weston. I'm kidding.
I'm a Weston. I was thinking Ritz-Carlton or something. I was thinking like Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah, I think, insurance, financial advisory associated with something that you trust. So maybe a old wise man or woman, sort of figure of trust, maybe telling a story from a positive angle of, when I was this successful, like this is what happened to me, and I worked with these guys that had the best insurance that helped my business grow. And it could be that Weston, like grandma, grandpa telling their story, and it's the Weston times. But insurance remains constant, whether you're 2050 or 1935. Like, you still have insurance, or 1700, you still have insurance.
Yeah. I mean, Mark, even in a bad situation, right? Like a bad situation only gets worse when you pile on other bad things on top of it, right? So in the case with your friend, like what a bad distraction to have to like raise money to do something that there could have been an insurance policy for. And then, you can get so the silver lining in a bad situation can always be that that's taken care of. You don't have to worry about that at all. I don't know. That's the most positive I could come up with right now, is that I just imagine a family like trying to deal with a loved one, a super unexpected passing or something that's happening. Or what about a case where somebody's like, there's some kind of disability that is now put into place, and insurance will help make the transition so much better and easier, and they'll have access to things that they would not have had access to had they not had insurance.
Yeah, and Aflac did a really good job, I think, of that, because they sell you disability insurance before you get disabled, right?
Yep.
And they ask you to add more money per paycheck, but what most people don't realize is, yes, you are covered with your employer through something called workers' comp, but only for a certain period of time. Varies from state to state. And then your workers' comp only takes like 60% of your paycheck for a certain period of time, and then you're on your own. So things like Aflac and the way they, have the duck, which is kind of like positive in a way.
Yeah.
But that is the concept. I think maybe that you're pointing to, show them the value before they need it.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to get on this whole commercial thing for a second, I think of the duck. I think of the gecko.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of what's his name from State Farm in the red shirt?
Jake.
Yeah.
Jake.
Yeah.
And then Progressive has Flo, and then there's
Yes.
what's the guy from 24 though? That's Farmers Insurance, isn't it? Farmers. What's his name?
Wait. I can't remember. I know
You know who I'm
exactly what
talking
you're
about.
talking about.
Dennis Haber.
Mayhem.
Dennis Haysbert is who it is. The other guy. He's like the spokesperson with the great voice. Anyway.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting to me, and I never thought about that until we just said it. All of those are insurance companies, right?
Yeah.
And I can't speak for the rest of the world. I never watch those commercials and think about bad things happening, even though
That's what
insurance is for bad things happening. Somehow they've gotten their audience to think about something else first in order to get them to pull in.
But let me
Right.
here's where the challenge I think that
Yes.
Nyasha has. Here's a bigger challenge to that, to even with those companies. The big step 2 is going, oh, when I realize I need insurance, then I need to pick an insurance company. And so I want to get the one that's top of mind. Step 1 is realizing I need insurance. Like, it's like really buying into the whole, and I think that's where Nyasha's at. Am I right, Nyasha? It's more like you're at the before level. You're not at the level where like, oh, somebody, because I think there's 2 types of people, right? There's somebody that's entering into the state of like, oh, I definitely know I need insurance. I just bought a new car, or I'm starting a new business and I know I need to get a certain type of insurance, or I'm renting a building. I need to get some kind of insurance. And then there's the other people that which is probably a bigger percentage of people that might be lacking in all kinds of insurance. That's just my thought.
Yeah, so you're spot on there. A large swath of people have insurance for some of the things that they need. And some of those things you only get insurance because you're required to, like car insurance or your home insurance. So if you borrow money from anybody, right, the government requires you to have it, but they impose it on the employer. And if you're not working, I think there are other ways of doing that. So it's this broader topic of the ability for a person to know what they have in one place, because right now it's like you have auto insurance in one place, maybe in your glove compartment, house insurance, maybe it's with the title deed somewhere, health insurance with your employer, your life insurance, who knows, like, do you have it, you don't, do you have a personal umbrella if somebody comes in your house and slips, for example, right, and sues you? You don't have anything for that. So what I've seen is trends such that they exist in both personal lives and also in business lives. So persons of color, for example, tend to be the most underinsured. You may have the insurance, but the coverage that you have doesn't meet, normal things that may happen. Car accidents are common, for example, Hispanics and Black people, and they just have minimum coverage because they thought that's what they need. And you run into someone's Bentley or Rolls Royce, and that could be a bankrupting event, right? Because you just were not aware of what you need, or even in health insurance, some people don't understand fully what their health insurance can and can't do. Maybe you have the type of health insurance that just covers the basics. You break your leg and you're on your own after that, with so much bills too. And some people just don't have insurance at all. Yeah.
So here's what I'm thinking. The whole idea of insurance for me is about relieving stress, right? For when these bad things happen, right? So I'm going to give you 2 scenarios that come to mind. right? I lost my mother many years ago. And I remember after losing my mom, there came that point where we had to think about insurance and funeral and everything like that. And I got to tell you, I never really paid attention to. I don't even remember what company it was. They used to use Snoopy as their I think it was MetLife. I think it was MetLife.
Yeah, it was MetLife.
Thankfully, she had that, right? Because that caused less stress in a very stressful moment, right? Fast forward many years ago later, now I'm the parent, I'm in the car with my son, and somebody backs out of a spot and hits our car. I won't go through all the details, but I will tell you this. Because I had insurance, I didn't have to worry about all the money that would have come out of my pocket to fix all of this. It was actually covered. And I think that's one of those things that gives a little sigh of relief.
Yeah.
And Cathey, you were talking about feelings and emotions earlier, right? How about tackling this issue around that feeling of relief when bad things happen?
Yeah.
To make a stressful situation less stressful, if such a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that approach quite a lot. I wonder how would it work in scenarios that are more like tying it from people dying to things that are happening today. So one other reason why I mentioned this is we are all using cell phones, a lot of apps, and we read in the news a lot of times that, Russia hacked Ukraine and such a company got hacked. And, these are becoming more prevalent. It's not just businesses that are experiencing this, but also people. And what people may not understand is that when you do get hacked, it's a stressful situation. It's not as simple as I'm going to swipe my card and get my information back. You have to go buy cryptocurrency in most cases, and the ransom price that you're being asked for, they know you don't have the money. And only things like cyber insurance are what can help you pay for the ransom itself that they have to pay. So I wonder if folks that are younger are also able to, understand that message that Marc was saying, like, how do we make the situation less stressful in whatever, insurance product it is that you're trying to buy.
Can I just have a moment, a punch in the face moment? Marc, have you ever even heard of cyber insurance? Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I'm dying right now. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even so to even know that, like, when we think of insurance, we just think, oh, car and health and life. And then there's other types of insurances that just probably weren't around 20 years ago, right, Nyasha? Like, this has got to be in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and I would say that is probably the most critical attack that nobody is talking about, because there is a cyber attack that happens every 30 seconds in the business world, right? There is at least one company that's getting hacked every 30 seconds. The thing about cyber and ransomware is that it's asymmetrical, right? So a lot of these attacks are not just people in their basements that are hacking you, but these are state-sponsored criminals that are stealing your information, right? They're harbored by these nations. Some are trained with the military. So for example, in North Korea, they have a big cyber operation that just steals money, right, and helps fund their operations as a government too. So you only have to get things, you have to get things right 100% of the time. They just have to get it right once to cause you so much pain.
Jeez. What a what a way to think about it, right? They only have to get it right once, and you have to get everything right. Like you have to be like 100% to keep everything safe. Wow, that's wild.
Right.
Well,
And
this
so,
no, go ahead,
and
Nyasha.
so, yeah, and so insurance kind of becomes your last line of defense, because if you call the FBI, they'll be like, we don't pay ransomware as a policy.
You're kind of on your own.
Exactly.
Well, funny enough, actually, there's a local restaurant chain in Portland that was started by like two brothers. And one day I was supposed to meet some friends there, and they had to close down because their whole system got attacked, and it was ransomware. And so I was like, wow. So people actually have to like negotiate and pay ransom. Wow, that just blows my mind. We should have led with this, y'all. Just FYI.
Well, we still can
Agreed.
educate. You still can educate people around it. To me, it's really fascinating because people think that it's not going to happen to them because they are safe until you get this weird screen, with broken English. That's just like telling you, like, we got you, right? And you try to log on other devices, and same story. Like, just imagine you being locked out of your own Gmail and social accounts, as an example, right? Or I think like the most simplest one might be, you think you paid your bill to your landlord, but there was a person in between who basically inserted themselves as the similar portal like them, and you just wired them, your money for your rent, and your landlord comes to you and it's like, I didn't get the money.
And you're like, what?
Insane.
Yeah, insane.
That happens? That
Happens every day.
Every 30 seconds, right? It's happening.
Yeah. Every 30 seconds, there's a business in the US that's getting hacked.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not a matter of if, it's when. Because
now,
it is going to happen to all of us at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad, and yet I'm not glad you said that. Because at first you said that, cyber attacks happen every 30 seconds. And a lot of the examples that came up were businesses. But then when you gave the example of, imagine being locked out of your Gmail account, or imagine you thought you paid your rent or your bill, but you were actually funneling money into
a man in the middle, classic man in the middle attack.
That's personal, Mark, right? That's what you're talking about.
That's
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how this idea explodes on a whole nother level. Like, this is not just about big businesses and small businesses. This is about individuals who can be hacked by this. And what are we doing to now be the last line of defense against this type of ransomware? If I'm speaking the right language.
Yeah. Identity theft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's ransomwares, there's identity theft. In my world, they call it ransomware as a service, RAS. There is actually a company that is like Amazon. You go on there and you can order certain types of hackers. Like they've made this into such a machine. All right, so you can have somebody develop an attack for you, and you pay per thousands of people that have been hacked, just like a software company. Software as a service.
Wow.
SaaS.
Yeah.
There's ransom as a service, right? So it's like a subscription service for hackers to go onto, and people have different sorts of infrastructure that you need to go and attack. Any kind of business that you want, or people too. And I think if you watch a lot of some of these crime shows that are true on Netflix, there was one of the guy who would hack women especially like girls who are like in high school, early college, and get this compromising photos of them and post them on a website to, shame them. So if this was happening, 7 years ago, imagine now, like the amount of information that's out there, and a person getting a hold of your Facebook, Instagram, Gmail.
It's like information insurance, right? And I understand the level of, like, my mom just recently, my mom lives in like the Phoenix area, and she came up to Portland, and she lost her phone at a grocery store, and nobody turned it in. She couldn't get into any of her accounts. She did everything from the phone, and then everything wanted a 2-step verification. So when she was trying to get into her email, it, like, from another device, it was like, oh no, you have to verify. And so then, and that wasn't even an attack. Like, it was, so I totally get this level of like, oh, like that was just like the system being complex. Okay, so Marc, I don't know what you're thinking, but like, that's such a hot new, like, I think, like, if you were talking about this, Nyasha, like, I would lead with that. First of all, I think I would lead with, like, because you also don't want people to feel like all you're doing is trying to be like, scare them. It's more like a interesting information. Like, did you know the things that are like actually happening right now, and how you blew my mind when you told me how orchestrated it was too.
Yes.
It's not some kid sitting in his underwear, like in the basement, like going, I'm really good at, computers, like I can hack. I figured out a way to hack into some systems. It's like countries that have intelligence, and they're choosing, it's like insane. My mind is blown so much right now.
I know. And did I hear this correctly, that like if I'm a hacker, I can go to like not Amazon, but basically an Amazon type of, and like find new ways to hack
ransom as a service.
Yeah.
What?
I know.
Yeah, you
exactly.
can. Yeah. So yeah, you can start up your own ransomware company. Marc Services. Just go online.
Marc's RAS service, right? But
Cathey, I just want to say, I love what you said. It's almost like a did you know approach.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was getting at. More like the, did you know? Because this is kind of interesting. Did you know? And I think, Nyasha, sometimes when you're in an industry, or you're in an ecosystem that other people aren't in as often as you, like you recognize that some of us only touch insurance when we have to or need to or whatever. But when you're this close to something, like, way more than everybody else. This information that we would never ever even know or think about. So I think it starting with like an interesting, like, did you know? Did you, like, when I say insurance, what do you think? I could see you in a room, like, asking people, and I could see the answers being like, oh, car, life, health. And then you're
Aflac.
like, yeah, and people might say brand, Aflac. But would somebody say cyber, ransomware? Like, would anybody say that, right? And I don't think so. And so I think that would be like a really cool place to start. And if you were giving a TED Talk, I think I would have you start right there I think I would have you start in a story that started off with that.
Yeah, I like that feedback and approach. What I learned too is lawyers and accountants are the most hacked in that group, right? And then construction companies are after that. So you would think that your lawyer and your accountant are the most safe, but they aren't. Those are the ones that are heavily exposed to and susceptible to hacking. And then, yeah.
Why is that?
They hold a lot of sensitive information, most likely to pay.
Yeah.
Too, and then they have the oldest, system. So they're transmitting documents around, via email. Most of the emails are not encrypted either way. So if somebody has access to either party's email, it's game over from there. So imagine being in a lawsuit and somebody finds out what's happening, and then they could say, I'm going to expose this information to the press or the public as well. And it's not as simple as just saying I paid them. When you get hacked, if you're a business, you are required by law to notify anybody who was in that system. So if you are a lawyer, you have to notify all your customers. You have to get them credit reporting as well. And then you have to hire this specialists who have to come and basically look at every single system to make sure that the code or any malicious software was not left on your systems, because a lot of these people will attack you and leave code behind so they can come back in the future and hurt you in different ways as well. So it's the cost of doing the negotiation, which you have to hire a ransomware negotiator, good career perspective for your future audience, for people who are looking for good work that pays really well. In my opinion, ransomware negotiators.
Is like up there.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah.
Then you're having to pay all these other things that come up, right, Nyasha? So you're having to pay to like make sure that there's no leftover code. You're paying for anybody and all the credit reporting if somebody like pushes back on you and says, okay, you exposed my information, and right. And then that opens you up to a whole bunch of lawsuits.
Exactly. And I'll give an example that people know really well. There's the oil pipeline that got hacked earlier this year, right? Mm-hmm. So the significance around it is, imagine some people, wherever in the world they were, saying that they're going to shut down the largest pipeline in the US that transports oil whenever they want to. You saw how oil prices went up, like, when that happened. We paid the ransom, for us to get access back to that infrastructure, right? Now, fast forward a few months later, there was a water plant in Florida, right? And luckily somebody caught it, but some hacker had figured out, well, like I can increase or decrease the amount of chlorine and treatments that are going into the water. Now that impacts you, the consumer in the end, right? Or your electrical infrastructure, right? If a country decides that they want to go into the electrical grid, they could turn lights on and off just to let you know, like we're here. And the US did it in Iran, for example, with the nuclear power plants. Like we let them know we're there by increasing and decreasing the temperatures of their nuclear reactors, right? So this is how asymmetrical cyber attacks can be, and why people need to take it seriously, not just businesses, but personally as well. Because for them, you could have two-factor authentication, but it can tell you how you can get past that. And if they get into your bank account, I can move money via Zelle, or wire it to myself before you know it. By the time you get to it, because the money is gone, there's nothing you can do about it.
Everything you just said blew my mind, scared my mind. It's got me thinking about what I need to do next. And it also inspired this visual in my head as you were talking, right? You kind of just see this image of this pipeline, but then it's like not just 6 degrees, but maybe 600 degrees of separation to every person possible on the planet. Like you got touched, you could possibly be affected. Your Zelle account could possibly be affected because of this random thing that you never thought was connected to you.
Forget money. Chlorine in your water? Like what? I was like, what?
That's insane.
That is like, you could poison an entire city. Like what? I mean, state, whatever, like crazy. That's like, yeah, that's
the kind of thing we think only happens in movies, right?
I know. I was just thinking that. I was just thinking that, like, Happens
I'm
in
a
a
big
movie where
Yeah. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and I know there was one of the movies where one of the villains was going to try to put something in the water, and everybody was going to drink it, and they were all going to turn. And it's like you watch that, and it's like, that's just some silly make-believe movie. But what you just said is this is 6 degrees of ransomware, where like, wow, we can all be affected.
Yeah, and for me, it's hit home. I guess I started paying more attention to this when Sony released that movie about North Korea, right? And then Sony Pictures and North Korea was basically saying like, well, like we can also retaliate if you don't want to pull this movie away. But what most people also don't realize is around the same time, somebody said something around the effect of like they say something derogatory to the state of Iran. That person runs casinos in Las Vegas, and the state of Iran basically disabled Las Vegas casinos around that period. And President Barack Obama said that he will not stand for it. So the retaliation was the hack of their nuclear power facilities. And I guess like states have that as kind of like their insurance policy against bad actors. But it seems as if things accelerated from those incidents where you started seeing a ramp up in attacks to really small businesses, the backbone of America, where they were not prepared for such things to happen, such as your friend who had to close their pizza store. Like pizza stores have nothing to do with, a lot of the internet, but they do have a footprint on the internet, and they got hacked. And most likely they probably didn't have cyber insurance coverage that helps cover the cleanup of, this mess. And for a lot of these, businesses that are, small to medium, which account for like 90-something% of all businesses in the US, it just takes one incident like that for the company to close its doors. People lose their jobs, all because you weren't covered with cyber insurance.
Wow, mind blowing. I absolutely think that there's a great way to talk about this that would be so like emotionally informative, because the kind of the emotions you feel when you hear something like this, it would almost be like a very educational, informative talk, right? Like we just learned, Mark and I just learned so much right now, Nyasha. My brain is spinning. I feel tired. I'm like, oh my God. But I think I'm going to go back to like, like you giving a talk on this. Like I could see you too, if it wasn't a TED Talk, because in a TED Talk, you wouldn't really talk to the audience, but anytime that you would be talking about this, like if you were talking to a big group of people, I could see you being like, what do you think insurance is and what is it for? And see, like, try to engage and see what people think and go, but have you ever thought about, and I like, Mark, what you said about, you kind of brought up the degrees of separation. It really means everybody's really only 2 degrees away from everything. It's not 6 anymore. It's like 2, because somebody could be hacking into your accountant's system, or, and that's only the 2nd degree, and anybody could be attacking somebody else that has your information. Now that I actually think about it, Nyasha, if I go back into my like emails, there's plenty. We all have gotten emails from a company that's saying that their information has been compromised. And then you just believe, you're like, they're like, oh, we did everything, like we took care of it, but we had to notify everybody. And then you don't even think anything of it. You're just like, oh, okay, cool. Ooh, that scares me now. Now I'm gonna be that person that wants to know more. So anyway, I just think it's a great place that is a really good way to, I think this would be a good to talk about it. It's new, it's fresh information in the insurance world, in an industry that's been around forever, right?
Yeah.
So come in and be like, what do you think about it? And how does the industry, you could even take it from a position of how an industry that seems like it could have no evolution can evolve so quickly. Because really in the past, there was no really evolution, I'm sure, not much, right? You're paying
Correct.
money for something when something occurs, right? And now it's like evolved. It's like everything that we have is a digital footprint and it's out there. And so now you're having to pay somebody ransom? Like what? Anyway, I'm sorry, I can't even stop on that, Mark. I'm just like, my mind is blown. But I think that would be like yeah, your mind's blown too.
Yeah, and now you got me thinking. Now you got me thinking, what do I do?
Right.
What do I do? Right?
Yeah.
You just got me to think
You
about.
don't have to tell me what to do. It's like I want to know.
Yeah. What do we do? Because I think that's the case. And just before you say that, I just want to outline what Cathey really set up. How do you define insurance? And listen to all the different things and then blow people's minds with the one thing that they're not thinking about. And then to share all of these did you know things. You said earlier I didn't have stories for like the good side of insurance, but you surely have so many different examples of how the evolution of this has really evolved and so many different things. And then to get into, and you said this earlier, Cathey, I don't know if you caught it, when Nyasha said, I started paying attention to this when. And I love adding that piece in because it just shows, right, how you're personally connected to it and how you got involved in this whole, let's say fight against, I guess we'll call it. And then getting into this whole, and Cathey, I love you. Your brain is genius. Not 6 degrees, 2 degrees of separation from all of this.
Right.
So as you go through all of that, now you set me up. Now, not only am I paying attention to the email that said, it may have been compromised. And now I'm like, wait, what?
What did you do? Did you pay? Yeah.
What do I do now?
Yeah.
Give me the answer, Nyasha. Give me the answer.
All right. Well, I'll start off from the personal side. And this is more speaking towards my generation. I know that we think that youth is, we're going to be young forever. But if you've learned anything through COVID, death can come at any point. So at least get life insurance so your loved ones and your friends are not left in a very compromising place. It's really cheap. And if you rent, you should definitely get renter's insurance. So it covers the contents of your apartment that you're renting, or in the event that, let's say, you knock a candle and it burns the apartment, you're not responsible because the landlord's going to come after you, right? Because some of that is not actually covered in their policy as well. So they'll come after you for damages in their apartment as well.
All right, hold on for a second. Cathey, I don't know about you, but for me, that was like the State Farm answer, and that was the Geico answer, right? I want to hear about, you just told me I'm 2 degrees from having chlorine in my water.
Yeah.
I'm 2 degrees of my Zelle account going to 0.
Yeah.
What do I do about that?
Yeah.
How do I protect myself from that?
Yeah, so I can only speak to that from the business perspective. If you own or operate a small business, there's a couple ways to protect yourself. First, you need to get cyber insurance, but it's not just any cyber insurance coverage that you're going to get. So it varies from carrier to carrier, but you at least want a policy that will help you pay for the ransom itself. And I'll tell you why, because they differ from the official stance of the FBI and the government. The government does not want you to pay ransom to criminals, and I completely agree with that. But what if the ransom actor says, I'm going to expose an email or your account list or financial information or sensitive information to your own competitors or to the public, right? It's things that can damage your business, and it's going to cost you a lot more to get up and running or go out of business, as Cathey's friends as well. So you're better off paying the ransom and working with ransomware negotiators. On the personal side, I don't know many carriers that offer, like personal cyber insurance policies. I can do more research and come back to you on that, and you can tell the audience in the future. But what I do know are, adding additional layers of security for your bank account, your phone, for example. Never respond to a person who says, hey, can you send me like a phone code? I lost access to Facebook or Instagram. It's actually a person who's trying to access your own account, and they just have access to your email, for example, right? And that two-factor authentication of like, hey, like this code has been sent to your phone. They're actually just telling you to tell them. So that's one easy way of getting hacked, even if you have two-factor authentication. Just like be aware of those kinds of things. And on your bank account, always add like additional layers, not just like a password. Put something else that makes it harder for you to enter, but also stops money from being moved. It prevents that situation where your phone gets stolen or lost. Somebody gets access to it. They don't just get into your account and start moving money, even with your Venmo as well, right? Yeah.
Right? Like if somebody got your phone, your Venmo is literally just on it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like I can Venmo myself.
Yeah. Somebody gets into my phone, Mark, they could be sending themselves Venmo, they just Venmo themselves, like, money through Venmo.
Cathey, do you ever get, because I'll be the first to admit this, like, now your banks have apps and things like that, and they'll give you an opportunity to do those extra layers, right? Like I've seen it where, they may ask for a thumbprint or a fingerprint, and I'm like, remind me later, remind me later. And now I'm like, no, do
now
it
you're like,
now.
oh my gosh, I gotta go to my bank and like, well, the funny thing too, think about this, Nyasha, just, if I were you, this is one of the things I would do. I would look at all the little nuances that are in the industry thing, even beyond the cyber stuff, right? But here's another little nuance. I use Chase as my bank, and they have a lot of security set up. It's usually a pain in the butt to get into it, even from my own phone, and they're randomly sending me other codes and stuff sometimes, even though I've already used, it's kind of more of a pain. But I never thought about the fact that Venmo is wide open on my phone. So if you just got into my phone, Venmo is complete. All you have to do is go to the app and then start sending money. And you're accessing my account, my bank account, because that's going to, so it's just kind of like a little pinhole to a bank account. So Nyasha, I feel like if you found all these little nuances and were like, oh, you think your bank is super secure? Awesome. How secure is your Venmo?
Can
you hand me your phone? Can I get into your Venmo?
Yeah.
What?
That's good. I just wanted to add to this. You said earlier, I don't know if I have too many examples on a personal level, on a business level, but this phrase of just add one more layer or add one more layer of security, then becomes something that I, on a very individual level, can do.
Right away. Yeah.
Right. And it may not change the world in one instant, but it's one thing that I can do to help. Go ahead, Cathey. Go ahead. I'm throwing it right at you. Go ahead.
I just had such a good idea from that, Mark. The whole talk could be the idea. Add one more layer, because then it's like twofold. There's a piece where it's just the individual, like add another layer of security. And Nyasha, you already, like, I was writing down some of the things you just said, like, add these other little layers. That there's things that insurance agents don't even deal with, like add another layer, add another, password, add a fingerprint, but then there's also the actual, and if you want to talk about the layers, add one more layer of insurance, that's kind of where you come in, right?
Correct.
So the big idea is add one more layer, and then there's kind of two components to it. There's adding one more layer on things you could do immediately. And if people trust you, like, that's the thing, like, if you're the person that, if your company has given me information on something I never thought about, that's like immediate trust, you know? I don't know. I love that, Mark. I love to add one more layer because you can use it on both sides. The actual, like, here's some things I could do to add another layer. And then also the like, oh, I got to think about all these other things like renter's insurance in case I knock over a candle. And I didn't think about the fact that the building owner might not have complete insurance. Never thought about that. I was only thinking about renter's insurance being for things that were damaged in my own house. I didn't think
you could get sued for things if you burn down someone's property, it's your fault.
No, that makes sense, right? Like you hear it and you're like, yep, actually that totally makes sense.
And it happens a lot because this is why renters insurance is big, right? Like there's big carriers like State Farm. They sell a lot of renters insurance, not to make more money, but it's because it's a product that they've seen. There are losses in there, right, that they deal with on a daily basis for some of them. So it does happen.
Nyasha, you need to come up with a bunch of stories. You really do, because you just made me think about, I have a friend that owns a business. Get this, like, listen to this story. He owns a business that is literally just the call center, and he did a very specific niche. It's for apartments only, like apartment complexes, right? So when their office closes, from the times that they're not open, he started a service that just does the answering stuff. So if somebody called at 2 o'clock in the morning, they might take a call and be like, oh, the pipes burst in our house. And then they'll be the ones that will contact the right people, right? Somebody in one of the apartments fell asleep. They were holding a cigarette. They fell asleep. They burned a huge portion of the apartment building, but the person also died, unfortunately. Now, they have all the layers, Mark, in place. Like when you call, they're like, if there's an emergency, like you hear it on the answering thing, right? If there's an emergency, hang up, dial 911. By the time they get to somebody, you should have had enough insurance layers of like things. He still got sued. Everybody else got sued. You would think that that there would be a whole line of people getting sued, and there were, right? But he also got sued and had to settle on something that should have never been the responsibility of his company. Wow. Ever. Because they're not 911, they don't even own the building. They literally just take calls and move them. And they were like, well, if you would have alerted 911 faster, maybe the person wouldn't have died, or like what, I don't know the details of like what they were saying, but like, anyway, Nyasha, like, I really feel like you could be in a really golden state if you can come up with these little things that like the did you knows.
That's a perfect example of why people need umbrella insurance.
Oh, right, because that's just that's like a random, right? It's just kind of like it's not a specific thing.
So in that case, but I love your idea of having different stories to help people connect with why they need extra layers.
And and I was going to say the magic of so many stories is depending on who you speak to, which story to pull to relate more to that particular person. And then every time you talk about it, I always love the idea of switching out one story and, that just kind of keep it fresh for you as well. So yeah, I love the idea as well of gathering as many stories as possible.
Yeah, and I want to add one more layer that I think is really important. I think people get burned, Nyasha, I think when a lot of people, for instance, if I say used car salesman, what do you guys think? What's your first reaction?
Thief and crook.
Right? If I say pharmaceutical company, what do you think? Right. And then I think a lot of people think the same thing if you say insurance company, right?
Insurance.
And so I think that I think one of the things that you should tackle, Nyasha, is that I know you a little bit, and I could tell like you're the kind of person that wants to do good in the world. Like you are doing this for the good reasons. You're not doing this for the bad reasons. And I feel that, but I think a lot of people they feel burned by the whole industry. And so why don't you just tackle that right away too? Be like, look, I would never even want you to buy insurance from me or anything. Like, I just want you to have, oh, you said it at the beginning. I wrote it down, Ashley. You said awareness. Like you mentioned at the very beginning. You're like, wow, it all starts with awareness. And I think that's what your whole, anytime you talk to anybody on any level, whether it's one-on-one or it's in a group or it's in a big talk, I think you should start there. Let's just play the awareness game. I'm going to say something and let's see how much you know about this. Because Mark and I would have failed. If we played a game, Mark, maybe we'd get 1 out of 10 or something, you know.
Yes.
So I don't know. What do you think, Mark?
I think it makes so much sense because it goes back to why we were joking about whispering the word insurance, and that the word insurance just triggers so much in people that it blocks us from listening. And so I do agree that you've got to get people, if whether you want them to be aware, whether you want them to add one more layer, whether you want them to buy insurance from you or anybody else, we have to be able to somehow dismantle that block, that mental and emotional block that people have with insurance, so that I don't think that you're a crook and you're a thief trying to sell me some policy that I don't even need because nothing's ever gonna happen to me. Hold up, wait a minute. Example number 1, story number 2, 2 degrees, 2 degrees. Check yourself again.
Yeah, there you go.
I love it. I love it. Well, I never thought that this conversation would get me into this space, like where we would end. And I know that my mind's changed a lot about insurance and just even the array of what's out there now, that of possibilities that could go wrong. Nyasha, I'm curious, like in our conversation, what's changed in your mind? Because you already knew about the insurance stuff. How has the idea changed in your mind? And we started, and you were like, it's not really even an idea. It just is.
Yeah, I think what's changed is just the approach of how to talk about insurance to people in a way that they can relate, and those 2 degrees of separation. So telling stories that are maybe pertinent to that particular person, right? So telling, in my case, stories of how other contractors have been hacked, to contractors who think that I don't work on the internet and it would never happen to me, but they have to get it right 100% of the time, and the hackers just need to do it once.
Yeah, that was another interesting piece of information. Yeah.
And to a normal person like you or me, that like you just need to, there are things that you can do yourself to add that layer of protection. So changing your passwords, for example, because the password you have in college is for sale online, and I could probably go on dark web and show you, right?
You got so many lines. That's what I'm saying. Like you need to sit down, Nyasha, and like write them down. Like some of them are just little lines. If you think, here's one, I'll give you a free one from me, right? If you think your bank account is super secure, how secure is your Venmo? Like,
Exactly.
that is the through way to you. It's like you have all these great one-liners. Your college password is online for sale right now.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, that is so wild, because most of anyway, okay, I'll put a stop to that, because I think we could just beat that forever, and hit that thing of like there's so much there. But I'm super glad. I could totally see, if you ever are in a space where you're doing this in person, I would play games the whole time, meaning like questions answered, like I would ask people like you have interesting things like what do you think the number one profession is, that number 1 and 2 that get hacked? What are 2 major professions that get hacked, that the top 2 that get hacked? I mean, people are going to say banks. People aren't going to think lawyers, and maybe somebody will come up with lawyer, but I don't know.
Nobody will come up with construction workers.
Nobody will come up with construction worker, and definitely not the water department.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody will think that.
Or
far,
the state.
Or the state. Yeah, it's actually the state, right? So, yeah. Anyway, I'm really happy to hear that this conversation has got you further along of thinking about just how you could talk to it. And I think Marc gave you a beautiful gift too, of just one more layer, like add another layer. Like, I love that. I think that was a kind of a reframe of what we started with. And I think it's beautiful. But Nyasha, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and kind of find out what you and Billy does, and like what's like they wanted to get into your brain a little bit more and find out about all this, where would they reach you?
Yeah, so you could go to our website, Billy for Insurance, Billy with the FOR, not the number 4, so billyforinsurance.com. You can text us 24 hours a day. You can also chat with us there 24 hours a day. You can also email us. You can find me on LinkedIn. So it's just Nyasha Harmony-Gutsa at LinkedIn, or Billy at LinkedIn as well.
Wow, that's awesome. By the way, I think that's the best URL I've heard in a long time. Billy for Insurance. It's so awesome and easy. I love that. I know, right? It's like, because Billy.com has probably been gone for 34 years. And so anyway, awesome. Well, anybody watching out there, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I think the thing I'm going to wrap up and say, and Marc, I'd love for you to say one little line, because I just wanted to say, this has been like a different talk for us, because this felt like part of it was like kind of commercialized, because it's something there's like an actual thing that's being sold there. But I really loved what ended up coming out of this. And anyway, I love thinking about insurance in a different way. And so, Marc, how about you?
After we're done, I'm going to turn on my phone and I'm going to add one more layer to my bank account. And let me tell you something, Mr. Billy for Insurance.
Yeah.
If every time you spoke to a group of people and at least one person walked out of that room adding one more layer, degrees of difference.
Degrees of difference.
Exactly.
Oh, so good, so good. So anybody watching, this has been a fun show, and I loved just thinking about insurance as a really big idea. Nyasha, you're awesome. This was so fun. Anybody watching, if you want to, if you're thinking, oh, I have an idea that I'd love to chat about, want to be on our show, you can go to our website. It's not as good as Nyasha's, but it's about to go down show.com. And I love this conversation. And as always, until next time, it's about to go down.